Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to cover my album. That'll be the last step of finishing this. So to do that, I have this and this as my paper. So this one will be the outside, this one will be the inside cover. I'm also doing a spine, and to make that, I'm going to just use this Michael's cardstock. It's the heaviest weight cardstock. I believe it's 110 pounds, but I'm not sure. I may double it up just to make it a bit thicker. I feel like that's what I did for this one. It's fairly rigid, so I think that's what I'll probably do. And then the first thing I will do, you'll see me do, is sand down the cover, and I'll talk about that when I get there. The other tools I'm gonna use are a wedge tool and a scraper tool. I also brought out this spatula in case I want to use that. The medium I'm going to use is matte medium. This one is a fluid. You can get thicker gels and things like that as well will work. Mod Podge would work. There's a few other things that you could use, but I like this Liquitex matte medium. It spreads fairly well and easily, so I'm going to use that. You'll also need a little pair of scissors, a bone folder, a ruler and pencil are handy, but other than that, that's all I'm really going to use. The other thing you'll see me do is I'm going to put in spacers on this side. They're just pieces of cardstock. I'm going to put holes in them and put them in between each of the pages in the album. As you'll see, this side is fairly thin, and then this makes it come kind of bulky on this side. So I'm going to put the spacers in so that it's more even across like a regular album would be. So let's get started, and I'll put you on fast forward and voiceover, and I'll meet you at the end to show you the finished product. So the first thing I'm going to do is sand down the album a little bit. I'm starting with the pages inside the album. Later, I will have them out. It is easier to do it that way. I'm going to start here in real time so you can see how fast slash slow I'm going. First, I'm going in one direction, and then I'm going to go in the other. Just a very light sand. And then I'm also going in some circles just to get some grooves in each direction, paying attention to that little seam as well as the corners and edges. You'll see me holding the album because it's not flat, obviously, because I still have those pages in there. I am going to take them out here in a sec. I'm going to do the front and the back as well as the inside of both covers. Here you can see now I have the pages out. It's much easier when it's flat. I'm not sure why I started with the pages in, but that's okay. So once I have that all done, I'm just going in with a baby wipe that I've pushed into a paper towel to take out some of the wetness and making it a little more dry. And just wiping off the album to get all the dust off and all the color, as well as cleaning up my mat. Next thing, I'm going to measure the album to see exactly how big I need to make my papers for the inside, especially. So for the outside of the covers, I'm going to want the measurement plus a little bit extra. I think I did an extra half an inch around. So that measurement for my cover is 7 3/4 wide by about 9 1/4 inches high. And for the inside cover, I want it to have just a little border around that you can see of the outside cover. So I'm making it just a bit smaller than the size of the album. So in my case, it is 7 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. So here I'm just cutting down the paper for the outside of the cover. Again, leaving about a half an inch around the whole edge. It will butt up against that little line there of the spine. And then I'm just taking my matte medium and spreading it out with the spatula and the wedge tool. You don't want to use a lot of the medium because you don't want it to seep out too much, but you also need enough that it doesn't dry super fast. If you put a very, very thin coat on, it'll dry a little too fast for you to be able to get your paper on. Now you can see the overhang here. So I'm just taking out, as you scrape the scraper across, it will bring the excess out to the edge. So I'm just kind of taking my tool there and getting some of the excess off. And then I just brought in that piece of paper to have something clean to push the paper down in, and then I'll put that aside to dry. And then I will continue on with the next one. This one I got a little more matte medium on than I should have. So I'm just taking a bit of the excess off with that wedge. And then I'll put the paper on and using the that wedge tool there, a different one because it's clean. You don't want to use your, that's why I have two. You don't want to use the one that has the glue on it. And you do have to work fairly quickly so your glue's not drying. And you'll just see me go around the edge here again to get rid of the excess. I'm just pushing it down to make sure it's adhered. And then I put that aside to dry for a bit, both of them. And then once the cover itself is dry, I'm just gonna use my bone folder to make a little fold to make it a little easier to bring up the sides. Then I was trying to round the corners a bit, but I ended up cutting off just a little too much when I did my diagonals. So it's not as even on the corners as I would like, but you can't really tell now that it's all done. It's just a little bit wrinkly, I guess. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. I'm just making sure that the corners are really well adhered here. So putting a little of the matte medium and then just holding it in place while it dries just a little bit. And then I will add some more along the album and then fold up the sides. Again, I'm going fairly slow here. I have it sped up, so it's hard to tell, but I am going fairly slow and making sure that it's adhered before moving on to the next. And then you'll see me come in with just a little more in the spots where it needed to be adhered a little better. And then just using that wedge tool to flatten everything out and make sure there's no wrinkles. I'm just going to continue on doing that around all the edges. And I'm just holding the corners here to make sure that they're adhered really well. And that will be it for the outside. I'll set those aside to dry. And then this is the next day or a couple days later. I'm going to start on the inside covers now that everything on the outside is nice and dry and cured. And I'm just remeasuring the inside just to make sure that the measurements I had done before were good. And I'll just trim down my papers to the size that I need. So now that those are cut, I'm just going to make sure that I like where they are. And I did notice that the edges weren't quite lined up from the top and the side. So I did cut just a little bit more off the top just to be able to see a little more of that outside cover. And I liked that a little better. It's better to cut your papers a little larger first and you can adjust them versus getting them too small. And then I'm going to just round the corners, the outside top and the outside bottom, just using my corner rounder here. There's two sizes on this corner rounder, and I'm using the smaller or the more curved, sharper kind of corner on it. I'm just doing that for the front and the back covers. It just makes it a little more neat because the corners are rounded on the album itself. I like to round the corners of the inside paper as well. And then I'm just going to adhere with this with the matte medium, the same as I did the outside cover. So just a bit of the medium and spread that out. The only difference with this one is I'm going to put some of the matte medium on the paper itself as well. I need this one to adhere really well the first time and make sure the edges are really good. It's hard to pull this back up. So I'm just going around the outside, being careful not to get the outside of my paper on any of the glue that's on the mat. So I'm putting in a different spot each time here. And I'm just going around the edge with some of the excess that I had taken off the album cover. And then I'm just finding a nice clean spot here and lining it up against the edge. And then I'll use one of the wedge tools to smooth it out and make sure there's no wrinkles and bring all the excess to the outside, but slowly to make sure that I can get it off before it dries. And that'll be the inside cover. And I'll just do the same for the front here. So this one, I ended up putting way too much matte medium on. It came out really fast. So you'll just see me take the wedge tool here, spread it around, and then I'll bring up all the excess before I put the paper on. Otherwise, that's all gonna come smooshing out the sides, and I don't want that because it'll be all over the album. So there it is. I still have probably too much on there, but it's all good. So I did the same thing with that one. I put some matte medium on the paper itself as well. And then I'll just use the wedge tool to scrape it all off or scrape it out so that it's nice and smooth. So I'm just bringing in my pages here and I'm going to measure to see how thick it actually is. Now, I had cut all those pieces of paper to put in as like extra in between each of the page protectors, but I decided instead to try to make my spine just a little bit bigger than what I needed to see if that would work, and it did. So I didn't end up having to put all of those into my album. We'll see how it holds up. I may go back and make the spine a little smaller and add those extras in, but for now, it's working. So I ended up, this is the cardstock I'm going to use to make the spine with, and it is 1 3/4 inches wide. So when I cut my paper, I did an extra 1.5 inches to have some that folds over. I'm essentially making this cardstock into a C. So the spine plus two overlaps on the side. So I cut it down to size and then using my bone folder here with my scoreboard to make the score lines. I'm just going to use the bone folder to make nice creases here. And then the outside of this will get covered with the same paper as the outside cover. So I'm just putting some matte medium just on that middle part, not on the sides yet. It doesn't have to be super precise. So my folds are facing down when I'm doing that part. And then I'm just going to line the paper up so that it's straight, but if there's going to be a bit of an overhang here, and I'm going to just cut my corners at a diagonal. And then I fussied with this quite a bit, but I'm just bringing up all the corner or all the sides, making sure everything is nicely creased and folds well and whatnot. And then I will go in with my matte medium and do the sides. It just allows for the paper to stretch so it doesn't leave any buckles. And I'm being really careful here to make sure that there's matte medium on all the like all the paper so that it adheres really nicely and that there's no bubbles. And I'll do the other sides as well here. And then once I have that all adhered and done, I will set that aside to dry while I move on to making the pocket. And always make sure when you're doing this process, you'll see me cleaning a lot. You have to make sure that your surface is clean at all times. And you also want to clean your tools often to get rid of that matte medium. So now I will make the pocket out of the vellum for this card, which the measurements again were 3.5 by 4. I'm just cutting that down. I don't have my glasses on here, so you see me cut it a few times because I didn't get it lined up properly the first couple of times. And then I'm just trying to decide where exactly I want to make the pocket. I had originally said I was going to do it in the middle, but decided I would just do the side. And I'm just going to line my card up here just to see exactly where I'd like to score lines. I'm just using it as a guide, and then I'll make them a little better and then crease the sides to make them nice and crisp. And then I'm doing another score line along what is supposed to be the bottom, but you'll see here in a sec right here that I turned it upside down by mistake and scored the wrong side. But I decided to move on and keep going. I'm not going to notice that 5 years from now. I won't even notice that it's upside down. So I just left it rather than wasting that piece of vellum. I'm just going to use it. So my pocket is upside down, but that's okay. So I'm just scoring the little corners here. I'm just doing a really simple fold. um, so I'm just taking out the little bit of excess on each corner and then just checking to make sure that the journaling card is going to fit. Then I'm going to take my 1 inch punch and make the little half circle for the little thumb hole. And then I'm going to just glue the very corners of the pocket. I want the card to sit nicely inside the vellum that's turned to the back. So I'm only gluing the corners to keep those adhered down to one another. And then I'm going to use some suquang tape to adhere to the back, and that's what will hold the pocket into the album. So I'm just taking that now, and I'm using my little metal ruler as my guide for cutting the tape. It makes it a nice straight line. I think you can see it in this one where, yeah, you just take the ruler and use that to cut the tape. It just makes it nice and straight. And then I'm folding the suquang back, but only halfway. That way you're able to line everything up without it actually sticking yet. And then you'll see me adhere it down and pull the little tabs out. And then I'll add in my card, and the pocket is done. And the next step is to punch some holes in the spine and get the album put together. So I'm just double checking, make sure I have it the right way since the pattern is a definite direction. I have to make sure that I'm putting it in the right way or I'll have to restart. And I'm just using a page protector as my guide for where to put the holes. The first holes that I did at a 3/16 of an inch just to have the holes in there so I knew where to punch. And then I went back in without the page protector and cut them at a 1/4 inch size so that they'll fit over the prongs of the album. And that's it for the cover. Everything is done. So now I can put the album back together. So I'm just gonna clean off my desk here, bring in my pages and the front, back, cover, and the spine, and we'll assemble the album. So the little prongs go in first, and then the spine, and then the pages will go in first to last. Just folding the spine up here, and we'll add the back cover, and that will wrap up my Week in the Life album for 2026. I will do a chatty flip through of the whole thing, like in a slow kind of way, hopefully next week. But other than that, this is the end of this series. Thanks so much for everyone who's been watching, liking my videos, commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will hope to see you in the next project. Thanks so much. Bye.